We've been in a hard Juno meta for about 2 months now, and even with her nerfs, it does not really show signs of stopping. So I want to dedicate my time in this video talking about and kind of re-evaluating Juno's design and her strength, and if this is something that we want to continue with going forward. Now you're going to watch a couple of games from the test of Juno from like 3+ months ago, because it's the only footage I found. So if you're like, wow, this seems a little bare bones, then that's why. Or she doesn't feel like she's as powerful as she should be. That might be the reason. So basically, here's what I want to talk about with Juno, because I do think that there needs to be a couple of shifts about how her abilities work, at least their power. But the one thing I want to keep in mind is that thematically, the playstyle that she has works really well for her character, right? So she wants to play like a little more scared, a little more running around, slippery. That really works with her like anxious personality style. She's like curious, but also cautious at the same time. And that's kind of like, you know, you're trying to min-max, like how far can I go while still being safe? And that I really like that idea. So I kind of want to keep that as much intact with these changes. And the changes I'm going to propose are not much. They don't change anything fundamentally. It's going to keep that in mind though. I want to be clear about that. The other thing about that is that I would like her to be able to play a little riskier. That is really more. I want her to be able to play risky and in fact have a reason to play risky, because right now I don't quite think she does. She's not like Ana, where Ana can play like closer to try and look for like a more what's it called, like a better Bionade and kind of brawl with the team. She is mostly going to play at a distance, and that's going to be it, right? She can go brawl in with her ult and with a Brig ult or something, but for the most part, that's not what she's going to be doing. So I want to get her to have to get closer. And whether that comes with just changing her abilities around or maybe giving her a little more to work with to incentivize that could be a decent idea. But also, the other thing about this character gameplay-wise is that she is an enabler, which is not inherently a bad thing, right? I think the problem is that she's just too good at only enabling. She doesn't get to do much for herself, and she interacts mostly with her team and trying to keep them up and give them sustain and all of that. Also, with Speed Ring, she can throw it at her team, at a teammate. They can get the speed ring multiple times, maybe even like 2 or 3 times before it goes away. And that can make it have a lot of uptime, which makes them a higher threat. And in that uptime, Juno is still healing and doing damage and everything. So yes, she is an enabler, and I think that she leans into it a little too much. I want Juno to be able to do a little more by herself, because that is what's fun, right? I think it's fun to be able to do things yourself. And she can, but I don't think it is necessarily the best play style for her. So let's talk about, you know, a couple of things. Oh, I forgot about one more thing, right? Her ult was recently nerfed, but I think you still really need to respect it, and it can be pretty frustrating. I don't know if the nerf was enough. I think maybe they want to hit the sustain a little more, but we'll have to see how that goes. The thing is that an ult nerf like that is not going to remove Juno from the meta, right? So we can't just always look at her ult, even though it is very powerful and I think it needed changes. We can't always just look at the ult, because the ult is not going to be up as often. And that is not why Juno is good. It's one of the reasons, but it's not the sole reason for her being so good, right? So with all of that out of the way, I don't think Juno needs fundamental changes. I definitely think that she is fine. There's a lot to work with here. I think a lot of people really like her. I really like her. I think she's a lot of fun. I don't think she's annoying to fight, but it is a little annoying to see her in every single game that you play or watch or anything for months and months on end. It is really difficult to play anything other than Juno right now because she is that important in the meta. So, I think being able to heal sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself. Let's just talk about the changes I'm making. A couple of changes that I want to suggest here that really just retool the strength of her abilities rather than actually rework them. And also kind of keep up what her abilities are trying to do, right? I don't want her to play differently. I just want her power to be shifted around a little bit. So I think that being able to heal during speed is what gives her unique identity compared to Lucio, right? But her speed should not be up longer than Lucio effectively. I think that is one of the problems, is that her speed is just so good, and you can have it for so long that why would you ever play Lucio when you can just have perma speed and the healing of like a typical flex support would have, right? So what I think right now is that the problem with being able to refresh that speed over and over again, it increases the uptime, but getting that speed ring and being able to refresh it is a really good idea. And I initially wanted her to, have it, that duration of speed be lower, but I think I have a better solution. And I think what I'm going to go with is that what if the speed starts out fast, like as fast as it is now, or maybe a little faster. You get like a nice big burst of speed, but over the duration of it, it gets less and less and less down to 0. What this would do is it would give you that big burst in opportunity like Juno would want. And that's kind of the fun thing, is when you get speed, you get a nice big burst of it. But then it actually limits your escape options, right? It's a really good engage tool. It's a good engage tool or disengage tool. It's not going to be both, right? You kind of have to play your cards right there. So you have to play a little more cautiously, and it might require you to abandon what you were doing earlier because you're not going to have the speed to get out, right? That's kind of what I was going for. It brings the uptime of the speed down without completely destroying it, and I think that is very important. Also, just as a game feel kind of thing, I think it's a nice addition to allow the speed ring to actually give you a speed boost every time you refresh it. So if even if you refresh it halfway through, you're halfway between normal speed and top speed. So when you go back through, you're still getting a boost of speed. So it's going to feel better to refresh the ring anyways, which I think is a good thing for game feel, right? So I think it keeps the best of both worlds, where you get that nice big burst of energy and of speed, but you're not going to just be completely overshadowing like other support characters, speed characters, Lucio, and you're not going to have speed up all the time. It's not going to be as good even when you have speed. I think that's pretty crucial to this, and this is a change I would really, really like to see. And then also, I think with her, her torpedoes, I think that's the thing that, right now there's a way for you to, it's faster when you're closer, right? So there is some incentive to play closer with torpedoes. But I think that if it's scaled, the effectiveness of it scaled with distance, that would be a much better way to get Juno into the fray. Maybe the burst damage the burst damage and healing stay the same, but the over time for healing is less. Maybe the burst damage changes, right? And the overtime is the same, stuff like that, right? So then you're actually encouraged to get closer because you will be doing more damage if you're closer. Then that brings in more risk because now you're really min-maxing about like, okay, if I play super scared, well, I'm not going to get as much value out of these torpedoes. And I think that's a really interesting decision to make. So that would make Juno, have to be more cautious. She potentially would play less slippery. Or she could still play slippery, but you gotta be careful, right? She doesn't have like the super mobility, because if she decides to play super backline, she's losing out on some of her, her pressure, or her value. So I think that's a really important thing that I think they should look into. And it would make torpedoes just a more interesting ability to use and give it more skill than it already has. But bringing the positioning more to it rather than just timing and decision making, right? So there'd be a couple more factors to it. And then finally, I think for Rey, the ult moving and doing all that is interesting, but I kind of want to see or test out what if the what's it called? The effectiveness of it kind of scales the further out you go from the center to some kind of minimum. Obviously, you don't want it to be 0. But I feel like everybody can get a lot of value from the ray, regardless of where it is. And I think you'd have to think more about its positioning if there was some incentive to really keep up with the middle of it, right? That's when it's going to be the most effective. You want to play in the middle, but that also gives a lot more counterplay to the ray, because if you could prioritize just making sure that they don't get to the middle, so that you have, they still have a power spike, but it's not as much, right? So, think about this meta, right? Orisa could try to spin them out of the middle, keep them away from it, bully it, so that they're not getting as much from it. Again, just any kind of counterplay. There's a million things you could do to do that, zone it out with ults, knockbacks, antis, everything of the sort. And that would be for sustain, maybe also the damage, but I think primarily the sustain is kind of the issue. And again, it would make playing with the ray, I think, a little more fun, because now you've got this little mini game of trying, again, to min-max what you're doing. I think Juno is as a character, the skill wow, this is a terrible ult from me. The skill comes from min-maxing, right? I think that is like what's really interesting about her, because she doesn't have as much mechanical skill as other characters, although definitely there is some. It's a lot of decision making, but also a lot of risk taking. And that's fun. I think taking risks and seeing what works, pushing your boundaries, is a really interesting dynamic, and a character really more surrounded by that. Like, it kind of plays like old Sombra, right? Where Sombra is kind of like weighing her opportunity cost and her risk management about like how much value would I get if I go now, stuff like that. And maybe if I greed my translocator, I think that kind of playstyle could work really well for Juno. Obviously not TPing out of the fight, but more so just being able to think a little more critically and push your limits a little more. And I think that would be a really fun change. But overall, those are the only 3 changes I've really come up with. I think for the most part, she is fine. I'm kind of off of the train of letting her headshot. I still think it would be nice. I'd totally be down for it, but I understand why they haven't done it, and it's fine. I think it's okay for her not to be able to. It would feel a little weird too with the way her spread works on her gun. The headshots would be a little inconsistent. But yeah, that is what I think about Juno. Reevaluating her, I think she's still fine, right? She's still a good character. I just don't want to see her all the time. She has been such a meta definer, and she's going to continue to be a meta definer at least until the mid-season. So I want to see some changes come out, because otherwise I'm going to get really bored really quickly. And Orisa is, I don't know if Orisa is still good. I haven't been keeping up so much, but she is an enabler, and sometimes she will enable the things that we don't want. So even if we like Juno a lot, we need to think about what she makes become meta, right? That is what's really important to me. And how can we change Juno so where these things don't just always crop up? So, okay, that is going to be it. Please subscribe if you like this video. I do really appreciate it. Leave a comment about what you think about my changes, or what other changes you think Juno might need, if any at all. Like the video while you're at it. And of course, this was streamed live, twitch.tv/Lane Hemingway. That's Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays. And if you want 3 months free to my Twitch, that is going to be in my Discord down below. There is a contest. Predict the Game of the Year nominees the best, and you will get those. And I will, all the details are down there in the description in the Discord. So please go check that out if that interests you. Okay, thank you guys so much for watching. Have a good day.